There are 3 words women die to hear. Not the ones you think. Not, I love you. Those are important, yes. But they've been overused, hollowed out by repetition. They've become a reflex, not a revelation. The words I'm talking about carry weight not because they're grand, but because they're rare. They live in the quiet space between affection and attention, between being looked at and being seen. Women long to hear, I see you, not the surface, your smile, your role, your usefulness, but you, the woman who holds contradictions inside her, the one who's tired of being strong, even as she keeps showing up that way. The one who sometimes wants to be touched not because she's beautiful, but because she's real. I see you, says, I notice the parts of you you've learned to hide. The ambition behind your restraint. The desire behind your politeness. The fatigue behind your care. It says, I see your effort, and you don't have to perform it for me. And then, there's I choose you. Not out of habit, not out of convenience, not because the alternatives ran dry, but because in a world full of distraction, I make you my focus. I choose your chaos, your grace, your laughter that sometimes hides pain. I choose the woman you are when no one's watching, and the one you're still becoming. To be chosen again and again, not as an obligation, but as a desire. This is what keeps intimacy alive. And the third, you're safe here. Not the safety of walls or locks, but the safety to speak, to cry, to rage. The safety to want more without being called ungrateful. The safety to say no without being punished. When a woman feels safe, she doesn't shrink. She expands. She laughs louder, dreams bigger, touches deeper. These 3 words, I see you, I choose you. You're safe. They aren't just for women, though women have waited longest to hear them. They are the foundation of connection itself. They transform love from a transaction into a conversation. They remind us that intimacy isn't built on constant closeness. It's built on the courage to reveal and the generosity to receive. Every woman deserves to hear those words, not once, not as a performance, but as a daily practice. Because when she does, she doesn't just feel loved, she feels known. And that changes everything. When a woman hears I see you, something shifts deep inside her. It's not a dramatic transformation. It's quiet, almost imperceptible. Like a door she forgot was locked suddenly opening from the inside. You can see it in her shoulders. They drop just a little. In her breath, it slows. In her voice, it softens but carries more truth. She no longer speaks to be convincing. She speaks to be understood. Because to be seen is not about visibility. Visibility is about the eyes. Seeing is about presence. You can look at someone every day and never actually see them. You can share a bed, a home, even a life, and still be strangers in the most intimate sense. But when someone truly sees you, they're not collecting data. They're feeling into your essence. They're listening not just to what you say, but to what trembles beneath it. A woman wants to be seen not as the sum of her roles, the mother, the lover, the leader, the caretaker, but as the person behind the function. She wants her invisibility to be interrupted. Because invisibility isn't about being hidden, it's about being overlooked. It's about being praised for what you give, but never acknowledged for what it costs you to keep giving. When she's seen, She no longer has to explain herself. She no longer has to prove her worth through effort. She no longer measures love through exhaustion. There's a kind of peace that comes with that, a return to simplicity, the kind that whispers, "You are allowed to exist without producing anything." And that's radical, because for centuries, women have been rewarded for being needed, not known, for being dependable, not desired, for being useful, not human. To say, "I see you," in this world is an act of rebellion. It's to look past the masks of competence, of perfection, of selflessness, and recognize the person who lives beneath them. When you tell a woman, "I see you," it's not flattery. It's not a line. It's an invitation. It says, "Show me who you are when you stop editing yourself." It's an acknowledgement that your truth will not scare me away. And when she believes that, she begins to show you the parts of herself that have lived in exile. Her longing, her wildness, her fears, her fantasies. The sides she's hidden because she was told they were too much, too needy, too complicated. But those are the very parts that make her vivid. The second phrase, "I choose you," takes that visibility and turns it into devotion. It's not the choosing of possession, but the choosing of partnership. The kind that says, "I don't just want your presence, I want your participation. I want your contradictions, your stories, your unfinished edges." To be chosen in this way is to feel desired not because you fit an ideal, but because you are alive in your particularity. You, exactly as you are today, not the fantasy version, not the polished one, are enough to be wanted. And that's where love becomes a practice, not a promise. Because choosing someone is not a one-time declaration, it's a daily act. It's in the small moments. The way you reach for their hand when they pull away. The way you listen when their silence says more than words ever could. It's the willingness to stay curious when comfort tempts you into complacency. Many relationships die not because love disappears, but because curiosity does. When we stop being curious, we stop choosing. We start assuming. And when we assume, we stop seeing. To say, "I choose you," is to resist that erosion. It's to say, "I refuse to let familiarity make you invisible to me. I will not confuse predictability with understanding. You are still new to me, even after all this time, because you are still changing, and I want to meet you again and again in every version you become." For a woman, being chosen in this way reignites her sense of worth. It reminds her that she is not interchangeable, that she is not just the default caretaker or the dependable constant. It tells her that she is not being tolerated, she is being desired. And that difference changes everything. When she feels chosen, she allows herself to choose back, not out of obligation, but out of freedom. She chooses the person, not the fantasy of who she could be with them. She chooses to show up, not to please, but to connect. And then there is the third phrase, "You're safe here." These words are sacred, because safety is the soil from which everything else grows. Without it, love becomes a performance. Desire becomes survival. Communication becomes negotiation. When a woman doesn't feel safe, she contracts, she calculates. She adapts to the smallest signals of danger. Raised voices, withheld affection, the cold silence of disapproval. She becomes fluent in reading the moods of others, but illiterate in her own needs. Safety for her is not about protection. It's about permission. The permission to exist in her full emotional range. To be angry without being called hysterical. To be sad without being called dramatic. To be ambitious without being called selfish. "You're safe here" tells her that her emotions won't be used against her, that her vulnerability won't be weaponized, that her honesty won't make her unlovable. When she feels that safety, her body changes. Her nervous system relaxes. Her laughter becomes deeper, less guarded. She starts to dream again. Because dreaming requires a sense of security, it's impossible to imagine a future when you're busy surviving the present. Safety doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It means the presence of repair. It means that even when things break, you trust that they can be mended, that you can disagree without losing each other, that truth won't cost you connection. And this is where love deepens, because love without safety is intensity, not intimacy. It burns bright, but it doesn't last. It's thrilling, but it's not sustainable. Real intimacy is born in the places where people feel safe enough to be honest, even when honesty is inconvenient. When a woman hears, "You're safe here," she doesn't just stay, she unfolds. She brings more of herself into the room. She becomes more expressive, more sensual, more alive. Her joy returns not because someone gave it to her, but because the fear that buried it has finally eased. These three phrases, "I see you, I choose you, you're safe here," they are the architecture of trust. They are the invisible scaffolding that holds love upright when everything else starts to shake. And yet, they are rarely spoken. Not because people don't want to say them, but because they require vulnerability to mean them. To say, "I see you," you must be willing to look without judgment. To say, "I choose you," you must risk rejection. To say, "You're safe here," you must become the kind of person who can hold another's truth without flinching. It's not easy. It asks us to confront our own fears. The fear of being seen, the fear of losing control, the fear of being responsible for another person's emotional safety. But love that doesn't ask for courage isn't love. It's comfort. When a woman is truly seen, chosen, and safe, she becomes magnetic, not in the way that seduces for attention, but in the way that radiates wholeness. She no longer seeks validation, she extends it. She no longer asks permission to take up space, she fills it naturally. She becomes someone whose presence nourishes others, not because she's trying to please them, but because she's rooted in herself. And isn't that what we all want? To love and be loved without disappearing in the process. To be with someone who doesn't just love the version of us that's easy to digest, but the full spectrum, the contradictions within contradictions. In a world obsessed with performance, these words offer something radical: authenticity. They tell us that love is not about perfection, it's about recognition. It's about two people saying, "I see your chaos, and I'll meet you there." Think about how often women are asked to earn their worth. Through beauty, through nurturing, through endless understanding. The bar keeps moving. The more she gives, the more she's expected to give. But when she hears these words, the transaction ends. She no longer has to bargain for love. And in that moment, something else awakens desire. Not just sexual desire, but the deeper kind. The desire to live fully, to take risks, to create, to play, to be seen in her power and her pleasure. Desire cannot thrive in fear. It needs freedom. It needs safety. It needs the assurance that when you reveal your hunger, you won't be shamed for it. When a woman feels safe, her desire becomes a language. It speaks through her eyes, her gestures, her laughter. It becomes the rhythm of her life. But here's the paradox. To make someone feel safe, you must first make peace with your own insecurity. You can't offer what you deny yourself. To truly see another, you must be willing to be seen. To truly choose another, you must be willing to risk rejection. To truly make another feel safe, you must be comfortable with uncertainty. It's not about saying the words, it's about embodying them. I see you means I'm willing to look, even when what I see challenges my image of you. I choose you means I'm willing to stay, even when the story isn't flattering. You're safe here means I won't use your vulnerability as a weapon when I'm hurt. Imagine what would happen if more people lived by these principles. Relationships would become less about control and more about connection. Less about being right and more about being real. A woman who hears these words learns to trust her own voice again. She no longer silences herself to maintain peace. She no longer measures her worth by how well she manages someone else's emotions. She becomes fluent in self-trust, the most erotic confidence there is. And in that trust, her relationships change, because she no longer seeks rescuers or redeemers. She seeks equals, partners, witnesses. When she is seen, she no longer needs to perform visibility. When she is chosen, she no longer fears abandonment. When she is safe, she no longer builds walls disguised as independence. Because at the heart of it all, that's what these words offer, a sense of belonging. Not the belonging that demands conformity, but the kind that celebrates authenticity. To belong is to be part of something without losing yourself. It's to know that your presence matters, not because of what you provide, but because of who you are. These words, these simple, tender human words, are not poetry. They are permission slips for the soul. They remind us that love is not earned through performance. It's revealed through presence. And when women begin to hear them, not as fantasy, but as truth, the world begins to shift. Because when a woman feels safe, seen, and chosen, she becomes a force of creation. She becomes unafraid to take up space, to lead, to love, to demand better, not from arrogance, but from alignment. And when she does, everyone around her rises too. So if there's one thing to remember, let it be this. Love isn't built on grand gestures. It's sustained by presence. Those three words, I see you, I choose you, you're safe here, are not just what women die to hear. They are what every human being aches to live inside. They are the language of dignity, of devotion, of depth. When you offer them, you're not just loving someone, you're liberating them. You're saying you don't have to shrink to be held. You don't have to prove to be valued. You don't have to perform to be worthy. So speak them often. Mean them deeply. Live them daily. Because when we give another person the gift of being seen, chosen, and safe, we don't just change a relationship. We change what love itself means in this world.